Seahawks fans, wherever you may be. Thanks for listening to the show. Join your hosts, Bill Alvstad and Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Hey, hi, Seahawks fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with co-host Keith Myers here to talk Seahawks football. We've got a great show planned for you today. It's our 9th annual win-loss prediction show for the 2025 season. It's an interesting exercise where we take a look at each opponent and we just kind of figure this out as we go. I did this exercise ahead of time just so I kind of had an idea of where I was going to be at, and it's kind of surprises me to write it all down. It's like, oh, wow, it kind of gets real. Welcome in, Keith. How you doing?
Doing good. Yeah. Going through it, it's weird. You look at and you're like, okay, there's certain games that you put down as wins, and then there's the ones that you're like, okay, they probably will lose, a couple of these, and then you start looking at the toss-up games, and depending on how the toss-up games go, you can have a really good year or a really disappointing year, and you got to kind of dig deep to get an idea of where you want or where you think those games are going to go. In order to do this well, this isn't something you can just sit down and, throw together if you're going to do it and do it well. So a lot of time went into this, more so than probably should.
Well, we've been talking about it for a while, just off and on. We just kind of mentioned like what's that?
So do you want to just jump in here quick and kind of get this discussion going, because I'm interested to see what you've got.
Yeah, no doubt. I think we should. And the first opponent is in 9 days. San Francisco 49ers come into Lumen Field, and by all accounts, they are the favorite to take this division on a national level, like when national writers and podcasters and darlings sit down and talk about the NFC West season. They have 49ers win, even though the 49ers won 6 games in 2024. Essentially brings back, that roster minus a lot of key players, and everyone thinks that they're going to win like 11 or 12 games. And I don't understand how that happens. Other than the fact that they've got a really good coach. So they're well coached. And Kyle Shanahan does a great job. They've got a decent quarterback, not spectacular, but decent. They've got one player on the defensive line you can count on a lot of the times, but he's also prone to injury in Boye. They jettisoned a whole bunch of their, key players, and they drafted a bunch of guys, but, like Dominic Pooney has been injured. Trent Williams is one injury away from that offensive line being just not good at all. And they paid, again, Brock Purdy. So that's why they had to kind of wean down their roster and get rid of some guys. And I feel like this is the time. This is the moment, I think, that Seattle really kind of comes in and makes a statement that they've arrived, that this is going to be their division to lose. And I think that it's going to be one of those statement games. Now, I am a little concerned, I'll be honest, about Seattle's offensive line and what that looks like right out of the gate. Like, is it well put together? Are they disciplined? Are they going to have one of those games where it just doesn't come together for them yet? Because it does take some time for that to kind of work itself out usually. But this team showed like a certain level of discipline in the preseason that I think kind of carries over on this scheme with this coaching. And so I've got Seattle winning this game. And I would probably normally be like 24-17 type of a score, but I think Seattle really does have an opportunity here to command the time of possession, really dominate on defense, and do enough on offense where we can, it's probably going to be like 27-13 is kind of where I'm at with this. How about you?
I've got this as a win for Seattle. It's at home. San Francisco's coming in, not only, having hemorrhaged a bunch of talent during the offseason, but also they're beat up. They're injured. They don't even have wide receivers that are healthy. One of the guys that's going to start was on the Chiefs a couple weeks ago, and they were able to get for a 7th round pick in 2 years. Like, that's how little value this person had, and yet he's going to be a starter for this team. They're desperate at wide receiver. It's really they're not in they're not in good shape health wise. I don't know how San Francisco is going to do this year. I don't see why the national media loves them. I honestly don't. I think they're the 4th best team in our division this year, and they won 6 games last year and then lost talent. So to me, this is a team that's they need a roster turnover. They need to build around Brock Purdy. They need to get younger. They need to get better. And this idea of just holding on to the team that was good a few years ago, they've aged out of that. So yeah, I think this is a win for Seattle. I think it's a fairly easy win.
I think that Seattle maybe a little better, gets some of those defensive guys some more time, and they kind of come around. But also, they've shown that they're susceptible to injury. Last year was, especially like if McCaffrey goes down, Trent Williams, Bosa, Kittle. Their season is over because they just don't have enough behind that to stay at that level. So, okay, starting out with a win. It does get a little bit more interesting for me in week 2, Keith, with the Steelers. What do you think?
I've got this as a loss. I don't think the Steelers are going to be great this year. The defense is going to be really good, but it's on the road for Seattle. I think that that offense, especially with DK in there, this is kind of the DK Metcalf revenge game. I think that they have enough to give Seattle some problems as long as they take care of the football and all that. But I don't know. I think you beat San Francisco. That's like the big emotional win to start the year. A little bit of a letdown in week 2, and I have that ended up as a loss.
Yeah, I've got it as a loss too. And it's not because of anything that Aaron Rodgers, I think, is going to do in the air. I think this team's a physical team. They want to run the ball. They want to hit you and punish you on defense. They like their special teams. I think this is a team that's going to compete in the AFC for one of those playoff spots. I think DK Metcalf does give them a really nice weapon and a presence that they haven't had. And it's just going to be really interesting to me to see if Seattle can go early in the season on the road and exceed expectations, because my expectations are this is a game that they're going to struggle with. And the only reason I think that is because it is early in the season. They haven't completely solidified that offense yet. And I think the defense shows up, but the offense comes up short early. I think these games they're a little bit more susceptible to that when they face a really good team. So I've got it down as a loss too, but it could end up being a win. And if it is, I think that really bodes well for the rest of the season, but we'll see. Okay. Seattle comes back home after a loss, and the New Orleans Saints come into town, and New Orleans has got one of the worst rosters in the NFL. Let's just be honest. And I really like their coach. I want them to do well. I think Kellen Moore is a decent human being and will be eventually a very good coach in this league, but he's going to need to get 2 or 3 years worth of talent infused on this roster for them to be competitive at all. So I've got win at home against the Saints. How about you?
Yeah, I would agree. New Orleans is not a good football team. I do like Kellen Moore. I think he'll be a good coach, but first year, I mean, we've seen that first year, there's some hiccups with the new coach, new coaching staff. And then you have a team that has a major talent deficit. If I remember right, isn't Spencer Rattler they're going to be their starting quarterback, which is a disaster. That's them. That's them playing for the number 1 overall pick for next year. This is going to be an easy win at home.
Yeah, Spencer Rattler's named the starting quarterback, but then they have Tyler Shug behind that. And I really liked him. I liked him in the draft. I think he's a good quality player, but if he doesn't start playing right away, he's going to be 30 years old by the time he takes a snap in the NFL. I bet you this season, Tyler Shug is going to get an opportunity to take some snaps, and we'll kind of see where he's at there. But it doesn't necessarily mean the team's going to be any better no matter who quarterbacks this. They just don't have any real talent. Their NFL roster is, they probably got 4 or 5 guys that can play and would start on other teams, and everything else is just kind of, you're right, a race to the bottom. Okay. This is where the season for me kind of gets real in the NFC West. We just had a real big show, a nice show with Bryce Coots yesterday about the NFC West, and we talked a bit about the Cardinals, and I think I was a little bit more bullish on the Cardinals than you or Bryce were. I just feel like this is kind of the year where it starts to come together for the Cardinals on most of the roster. Like the roster is starting to mature a little bit. This is year 3 of their kind of rebuild. Austin Forts did a great job both in free agency and in the draft to build this roster. It all still surrounds Kyler Murray, though, and that's where this roster falls short for me as far as a roster that could really do some damage in the regular season and get to the playoffs and really be competitive. So I have this as an early season on the road victory in a key NFC West showdown with the Cardinals. I've got it as a win.
Our first difference. I have this as a loss. The Cardinals are very good early in seasons, and then they fall on their face in the second half. This is one of those games. It's early in the year. It's early enough that you're going to get their best look. It's going to be at home for them, away for Seattle. Even though that some years is an extra home game for the Seahawks as far as like what's going on in the stadium. I think you are a little higher on the roster in part because you're in Phoenix. And so you hear more about, all the little things. But the fact that I am not as enamored with the roster, but I still have it as a loss is kind of interesting. But no, I have that as another loss for Seattle. So they're starting the year 2-2 according to me, and 3-1 according to you.
How realistic do you think that is, Keith? That the team starts at 500 after 4 games. I mean, obviously that's what you put. But this year is, second year with Mike Macdonald. We've just came out of like the look at the NFC West, and we all felt really good about the conversation surrounding the Hawks. But you've got them at 2-2. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that you mentioned earlier with the offensive line, it's going to be one of those things where that takes, they'll get better as the season goes on, as they get more cohesive on there. And it's also just the schedule. I mean, you put, Pittsburgh and a road trip to Arizona early on, that they're going to have that. Also, I should remind you that the Super Bowl winning Seahawks team of 2013 started out 500. and then turned it on and was one of the best teams, especially one of the best defenses you'll ever see. And so a slow start. I don't know. 2-2 is not really a slow start. It's just kind of an average start. But it's not going to hold the team back if you're thinking like long term, like this is going to be a good team.
So, okay. So after that Cardinals game, I've got them as a win. You've got them as a loss. The Seahawks return to home. At least one of these games is at home. The Buccaneers come to Seattle. Mm-hmm. This is a fairly decent roster. They're expected by most accounts to win their division, or at least be very competitive in their division. But I've got this as a win for Seattle. For me, that's, ends up being a 4-1 record at this point in the season. And I think for me, I really feel like this is kind of where Seattle really starts to separate themselves, not only in the division, but as one of the better teams in the NFC, certainly one of the best defenses. And they just kind of shut down Baker Mayfield and company and do enough on offense again to eke out a win here at home.
Yeah, so this was the last game that I picked win-loss on because I was just stuck on it. I didn't know. I just didn't have a feel for it either way. And so I just skipped it, moved on, and then came back to it at the end. And I ended up putting it down as a loss in part because of what it did to the overall win-loss record at the end. And it got me where I wanted to be. But yeah, I mean, that a loss. That means now the Seahawks have lost 2 in a row, lost 3 out of 4. They're 2-3. And, the bandwagon is emptying out according to my schedule. But hang on, it gets better.
So what is happening with Sam Darnold in your mind with this record? What is going on there? Is there a concern that he's not doing enough, or is this strictly other people on the roster that are allowing this to happen?
I think it's just a matter of for a record for them to end up there. It ends up being that defense has given up a couple big plays that they shouldn't have. The offensive line is still coming together. The offense isn't as efficient as it should be yet. Running against Arizona and Tampa, those are a couple of good defensive teams. And so it's like, yeah, if they could have converted a couple more third downs, they might have turned those into wins, but it's early in the year and they haven't yet. I'm not going to blame it on Sam Darnold. They're not getting here because he's throwing a ton of picks. It's just kind of the way football is. I mean, it's a game of inches, and in the NFL, the talent difference between the really good teams and the average teams really isn't that big. And so sometimes the ball just bounces in the wrong way for you. So that's kind of where I've got them at 2-3.
Okay. So let's talk about the Jaguars on the road, 10 a.m. This is kind of a mid-October day. Shouldn't have to worry about any weather at this point yet in the season. I've got this as a win. The Jags still have what I would consider a mediocre roster. And this is, again, I really like the maturity level of this team as this kind of defense comes into its second year with Mike Macdonald, and the way they just start to take care of business. Now, you had talked about the Bucs. They didn't take care of business, right? They're not taking care of business for you, but for me, I think they're just a notch ahead of that sentiment. And this is a game that really, you go down, you beat a team that you should be beating on the road, and you come home with another win. That's where I'm at with this.
Yeah, I've got them as a win too for all of those reasons. The Seahawks are just the better football team, and at some point that talent is going to start to show in the win-loss record, and they go down to Jacksonville and they beat up a team that they should beat.
Okay. So the week before the bye, 7 p.m. Monday night football game, Texans at Seahawks. This could be a fun game. I actually like the Texans roster. They drafted Jaden Higgins there to be their bigger wide receiver. He can still stretch the field for you. They've got a decent offensive line, although Laken Tomlinson, that played with Seattle at left guard last year, is their left guard. They got him penciled in as being a starter. Dalton Schultz is a good tight end for them. Obviously, CJ Stroud, Nick Chubb is their running back. Nico Collins is there as well. Christian Kirk, all around a decent offense. On the other side of the ball, they've got Will Anderson Jr. on one side, Sheldon Rankins there in the middle, Daniel Hunter still playing and playing at a pretty decent level. I like their defense overall as well. Derek Singletary Jr., CJ Gardner-Johnson, really decent roster, and they expect to compete in the AFC for not only just to get in the playoffs, but to win a game and potentially go further. So what are your thoughts around this? I gotta see where I'm at on if they win or not, because I wrote this one down and I think I had it as a win, Keith. I think I have the Seahawks as a win and literally sitting at, what was it be, 6-1 at the bye.
Wow. 6-1 at the bye would be amazing. I have this as a win. I have you were saying that the defense starts to assert itself, or what has been, and I said that, a little bit of a slower start, and then they really started to assert themselves the week before in Jacksonville. They continue it here against the Texans. Now that Seattle's defense is really starting to establish itself as one of the elite defenses in the NFL. So they get 2 wins back to back and go into the bye at 4-3.
Okay. So we enter the bye week. I've got them. You've got them at 4-3. At least they've turned the corner on their over 500 record. I've got them at 6-1. They're really starting to build momentum for me. But coming off the bye, they travel to Washington, D.C. to face the Commanders. This is a really decent roster. They showed that last year. I think they got even better this year. This is going to be a team that could be arguably one of the top 3 teams in the NFC. You can take a look at Green Bay now with Micah Parsons added to that roster. You can obviously take a look at the Philadelphia Eagles. And then there's 2 or 3 or 4 teams I think that could be in the conversation, at least at this point in the offseason, right before kickoff, where you could say that they're going to be a top 5 team in the NFC. I think Seattle's in that conversation. I think you still have to talk about the 49ers until they fall off, until they have injuries, maybe even the Rams. Obviously, the Green Bay Packers, Commanders are going to be right there as well. I've got this as a loss.
I have this as a loss as well. Washington made the NFC title game last year. Jaden Daniels looks legit. They're going to give him more responsibility and stuff this year as he, continues to improve. They've built some of the roster around him, and Dan Quinn's just been a fantastic coach. He's really got that team been rolling. So I expect that to be a really tough game for Seattle, and I've got it down as a loss.
Yeah, I think the year 2 of Jaden Daniels is going to be just fascinating for me. I really am looking forward to seeing that kid play, and I'm not sure if Seattle has any way to solve him. It'll be, you can say, well, the Seahawks faced the Cardinals early, and Kyler Murray kind of gives you some of that challenge as far as a guy that can move around a little bit on you. But Jaden Daniels is a completely different level of player in that respect. And so I'll be very curious to see if they can slow him down at all. But I've got it as a loss, as you do. Okay. Cardinals come to Lumen Field for their second matchup of the season. And I've got this as a win. So for me, I've got it as a sweep of the Cardinals this season.
Yeah, I've got this as a win. This is about the time of year where the Arizona decides that they can't keep up, or I don't know what it is, but it's been like 5 or 6 years in a row that they just suck in the second half of the season. And as I was saying before the bye, Seattle's defense is really starting to assert itself. And now you get Arizona at home. And as they start to struggle, Seattle's surging. That becomes a pretty easy win for the Seahawks.
Okay. Seattle at Los Angeles Rams is the next game on the schedule. I have got this also as a win for me. We talked about this as part of our NFC West look in the last show that we did. And it really does come down to the health of Matthew Stafford for me. And it doesn't look great. Like, he barely practiced this off season. He barely practiced during training camp. He didn't play in any preseason games. They say that he's going to be ready to go for game 1, but I mean, he has no rhythm, no timing with any of his receivers. I mean, obviously they've been throwing on the sidelines and all that kind of stuff. But I do worry about him and his health. And I think that that's going to be a factor in how far this team goes this year. Everyone thinks that they're going to be a fairly decent roster. I think they do have a really good defensive line. I think it's one of the top 5 defensive lines in all of football. But their offensive line is a little sketch for me. I think that contributes to the health of Matthew Stafford as well, because I think he does get chased down, gets sacked frequently. I think when he is pressured as well, I think Matthew Stafford is not a very good quarterback, makes mistakes, and tends to hold the ball a little longer and then get sacked. So I've got this as a win for Seattle. And again, it's one of those games where it shows that Seattle is taking control of this division.
Yeah, I struggled with this game. Arizona plays, or not Arizona, LA plays Seattle tough. They have, they're well coached, Sean McVay. And I struggled. I was with you. I'm like, at this point, you're already, more than halfway through the season. Is Matthew Stafford still out there? He very much could be on IR at this point. But I decided, like, okay, if he's healthy and playing, you're on the road. I'll give the Rams this one, and I have it as a loss for Seattle.
It could be definitely one of those games that we've seen in the past where it's just a defensive battle, and it's who has the ball last, who's able to score, who's able to get a field goal to walk off. It could be one of those. I do know, though, that last year in the second game that we played on all 3 of our division opponents, Mike Macdonald and company, that defense shut those teams down. And so I fully expect the Rams to really struggle in this game against our defense. So, okay. Seahawks at Titans. Again, one of the worst rosters in the NFL. There's not a lot to like about this team as far as, players. They've got a couple pieces. Tyler Lockett's going to be there. He's their starting kind of slot wide receiver. Cam Ward is the quarterback. Behind him, they've got Brandon Allen and drafted free agent as their backup. So it's really kind of a developmental year for Cam Ward, and hopefully their offensive line can kind of protect him and give him at least a chance. But beyond that, Keith, this roster is void of NFL talent.
I agree. This roster just is not primetime ready in any way. This is an easy road win for the Seahawks.
Okay. I like this stretch for the Seahawks down the stretch. Let's see, there's 2, 4, 6 games remaining. This is really going to be the tell on which direction they're going to go, especially for you. I think you've got them with way more losses than I do. Things are going swimmingly well for me so far this season, as far as my predictions are concerned. But the Vikings come into town, and I've got it down as a loss. I think that the Vikings still have a decent roster. This is kind of where their quarterback now comes into his own, and JJ McCarthy. They try to really create an offense that's suitable for him and what he does well. And then their defense is pretty good. I mean, they won 14 games last year. They are minus Sam Darnold, but they did bring in some offensive line help as well. They still got the weapons there, especially Justin Jefferson. I've got it down as a win for the Vikings and a loss for Seattle.
I have it down as a win for the Vikings and a loss for Seattle as well. For a lot of those reasons, this is a team that won 14 games last year. And yeah, they lost their quarterback. He's now playing for Seattle, but they had JJ McCarthy there that they had drafted, and they're turning the keys over to him. It might be a slow start for him, but this is late in the year, and it's a very good defense. They run the ball well. They improved the offensive line. And man, Jefferson is so good. Like, he's probably the top receiver out of anybody in the NFL right now. And that's a good football team. That is a really good football team. So I have this as a loss for the Seahawks.
Okay, so Seattle goes on the road to face the Falcons. It's a 10 a.m. game. The Falcons are an interesting team. They're definitely what everyone considers to be up and coming. They're now going with Michael Penix to start the year at quarterback. I think that's a amazing move. They got Bijan Robinson, one of the best running backs in the NFL, followed by Tyler Algier. Again, a really nice tandem. They've got Kyle Pitts at tight end. They've got a decent offensive line, Drake London, Darnell Mooney at wide receiver. Their defense is not too bad. It's kind of coming together. It's probably more of a work in process for them. But I've got this as a loss. That Vikings game would be a tough one to kind of recover from. They go on the road, and this is kind of a letdown for them, and I've got it as a loss.
I've got this as a win. I think that the Vikings game is a tough game. It's a hard-fought game, and the Seahawks come out of that game just pissed off. And they go down and they take it to an Atlanta team that's defense isn't ready to be an elite team. The offense has a lot of talent, but it's really young. And I think Seattle's defense is just like, no, we're not doing this anymore. And they really take it to Atlanta and come away with a good road win there.
Okay, nice. So here we face the Colts at home. Daniel Jones is the quarterback. Beat out Anthony Richardson. Rylie Leonard's there as well. Their draft pick from Notre Dame. They've got issues up and down this roster. They're going to be in a race for the first pick in the draft, and I've got this as a win.
Yeah, this is an easy win at home. Seattle's defense is asserting itself and basically says, you're not going to score. I could see this being a massive blowout for the Seahawks.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So last 3 games of the season, the Rams come into Lumen Field. I had them beating the Rams in the first game. I've got them beating the Rams on Thursday Night Football late in the season, December 18th game. Weather could be a factor. Our running game is just too much for that defense now with the Rams, and our defense is way too much for their offense. So we've got a win here on the third to last game of the season.
Yeah, I've also got this as a win. I think this is the statement game where Seattle claims the division, and the division is now theirs. Their defense just shuts down the Rams. The offense just you can't stop the running game, and Seattle walks away with just a really convincing win here to say, yeah, this is our division now. That's an important game for the Seahawks, but I have it as a win.
Okay. So Seahawks at the Panthers. Carolina Panthers. It's kind of an interesting roster. Bryce Young is the quarterback. He's beaten out Andy Dalton. They're trying to build some things around him. Tutoria McMillan was injured, I believe, and is probably, well, he's out early in the season, I know, but hopefully by this game, he's back and healthy for them. Chuba Hubbard is their running back. They've got a few pieces on defense, but they have a long way to go before they're a 500 team, let alone a winning team competing for the division, competing for a playoff spot. So I've got this as a win on the road.
Oh yeah, this is an easy one on the road. I'm not a believer in Bryce Young. I haven't been since they drafted him. The fact that, he was their number one overall pick, and now he's got to compete to keep his job against Andy freaking Dalton. Should tell you about how well he's played. Yeah, that is not a team ready to compete for a playoff spot. That's an easy win for the Seattle.
So it all comes down to this, and it really does have more meaning for you at this stage. I've already got them at 12 wins. Now, this ends up being a somewhat meaningless game for me. It looks like we're winning the division. For you, you're sitting at 10 wins, and you could be, in the playoffs, fringy 7th or 6th seed, and a win would really help you. How did this go for you?
Oh, this is San Francisco. This is at this point in the year, they've shut down Bosa and McCaffrey, and they're basically a JV squad, and the Seahawks go in there and just blow them out. And end up at 11 wins. That wins the division over the Rams, who finished with 10. Over Arizona, that finishes at 9, and the San Francisco, which finishes at 6. The Seahawks win the division that week and head to the playoffs as probably the number 3 seed.
Wow, nice. I've got this as a loss, only because it's a meaningless game at this point. We've shut down Sam Darnold. We allowed Jalen Milroe to take the reins for a game, just as a reward for hanging in there all year, and give him a little bit of a run. And it just ends up being a loss, meaningless nonetheless. 12 wins. And so you're 6. I gotta rewrite that. Yep. And so that's amazing. So
see, I thought for sure you were gonna end up at 13. Because you've been saying 12 probably for the last few shows. So I'm like, okay, when you sit down to do it, you're the eternal optimist. You're going to end up at 13. Oops. And I want to be a counterpoint to that a little bit. So I got to the end of all of this. I didn't have that Tampa Bay game decided yet. I looked at them, and they were 11-5 with that Tampa game left to figure out. I'm like, do I pick 12? Or do I pick 11? And so I'm just going to pick 11 because I thought you'd be at 13, and that would, we'd average at 12, which is, I think, where it's going to be. But then you gave San Francisco the week 7 or the week 18 game to make sure that you stayed at 12 rather than going to 13. But we're only off by 1. I have the team struggling a bit early, but then you look at the end of the season, right? They go into the playoffs on a 5-game winning streak. Nobody wants to play Seattle. They get a home game, and then it depends on what happens after that. Winning a couple playoff games is not out of the question. Getting into the NFC title game. Nobody wants to play the Seahawks at the end of the year because that defense has established itself. Nobody wants a piece of them. The running game is going. It's a physical game. You come to Seattle, you're going to get beat up, and that's where this team is at the end of the year, and that's right where we want them to be at the end of the year. Is dominant and physical and the bullies of the NFC. And you can say what you want about starting slow, but they finish where you want them to finish.
So I definitely have them starting fast. Everyone at the bye week is talking about Seattle, not just in Seattle, but across the league as a team that's setting itself up to compete for the NFC title and get into the Super Bowl. I mean, it's crazy. I think that if we can start like that, it would be amazing. You've got them starting in a way that would make me nervous, like totally, completely unsure of which way this team's going to go. And is the offense working? Did we completely make a mistake in the offseason by thinking that we were better than we actually were? All of that. But then you've got it turning around a little bit after that. And those 5 wins in a row, I mean, really kind of solidified everyone feeling better about the team. But it took a minute for them to get there. For me, I've kind of got it spaced out after the bye a little bit more. When a couple losses in a row there, I think could be potentially realistic as well. But 12-5 for me, I think that's really, and I looked at this schedule, since this schedule came out in May, really just looked at this thing like several different times. And every time I come into this range with a win total, especially now after that preseason performance against Kansas City. I'm not going to put too much weight into that, but what that did show me was that this offense can be competent, can be composed, is certainly more well-rounded, well put together than they were last year at any point. And it really did give me some hope that this offense could be serviceable and maybe even better than that. Maybe there's an opportunity here for the offense to be certainly a top 10 rushing offense and maybe a top 15 passing offense if Sam Darnold and company can just really play off that running game, use play action pass, the efficiency level on converting third downs and fourth down opportunities and red zone opportunities is really where it's at. And because of that, the time of possession is way more in our favor at the end of the year than our opponents. And our defense really just kind of plays into that. And that's what Mike Macdonald talked about when he talked about complementary football. And I really think that this is the year where it really kind of all comes together for Seattle. And 12 wins is a reflection of that for sure.
Yeah, 12 wins is not out of the question. Like I said, for me, my initial look at this 12 wins was they were right there, and I had to go back and I didn't want 12. I wanted 11. Given the option, I was deciding on one game, and like, well, what does that change? And I decided to go with 11 over 12. But if you change that one game, that Tampa game, so they never get below 500. They're always above 500 throughout the entire year. And then they go on that streak at the end and you end up at 12. That's entirely possible too. I like that streak at the end.
Let's be real here. What's the worst case scenario for you? Did you ever for a moment think about giving them less than 10 wins?
No.
But what's the floor?
Well, I'm trying to. I'm looking. I'm like, what are?
We saw this. We saw this defense last year, right? A top 5 defense. Even it wasn't even top 5. It was top 10 when you factored in the beginning of the season.
Yeah, but after the bye week, they were
overall,
top 5
with a 28th ranked overall offense. And now there were some metrics that gave them a little bit more credit than that, but that's where the running game was. That's where the passing efficiency, total yards, total points, all that kind of stuff was middle of the road at best. And now you factor in maybe a slightly better offense, at least more well put together, that actually helps the defense. This defense could elevate just based on time of possession alone and taking one less drive out of the equation per game, and giving that defense even more help to stay off the field. This could be a special year.
Yeah. I mean, pretty much the way it worked out is any game that I felt was losable, I gave them a loss. The only one might be the Rams near the end of the year. And that's if the Rams are still healthy and Matthew Stafford can walk without a back brace, or a walker. And other than that, like if I saw a game as being losable, I have them with a loss. I don't see other losses on here. That where it's going to be where, the wheels could fall off this thing. I think 10 is the floor.
I think the Texans game could be a loss.
Okay, I'll give you that. They've got some nice pieces. They're not a complete team. And I see that as a very winnable game, but okay, maybe. That is a loss. So then what's the floor? 9? 9 wins?
I think the floor is 9. I think the floor is 9. Honestly, I think it is. I think you could say the 49ers, Rams, and Cardinals games in your division are always toss-up games. I mean, they're not going to be true toss-ups. Obviously, I think Seattle's going to be favored in some of those. I think 49ers and Rams, 49ers are favored in this game coming up. It's just going to be one of those things where, the ball bounces in the NFL. It's just, it is the way it is. And then some games against some teams just end up being harder than you think they should. And at the end of games, when you're in a one-score situation, stuff happens. And it is crazy. I do think, though, that we saw last year the flourish kind of thing with a Mike Macdonald team at 10 wins. It's like the offense was awful and the defense was emerging and starting to get really good in the last 8 games. But the first 8 games, the first 9 games were mediocre, really. They had a couple of moments, right? But this year they're going to start out of the gate with that top 5 offense, potentially number 1 defense, top 5 defense, potentially number 1 defense overall. You start out of the gate with that, and then you add this complementary offense to it. It's hard to say that this team could lose any less than 9 games. I mean, it's just hard to manufacture that. It'd be like trying to manufacture it as opposed to, that's realistic.
Yeah. I mean, I look at it as, you look at Carolina, Indy, Tennessee, Jacksonville, New Orleans. Those are 5 of the worst rosters. Those are all 5 of those teams will have top 10 draft picks. And they're all on Seattle's schedule. I mean, there's 5 wins. Can you get 6 more? Well, you got San Francisco on your schedule twice. And the way that roster is, they should get 2 more. So that puts you at 7. You only need a couple more to get yourself into the playoffs. And there's a lot of winnable games here. And Arizona twice and the Rams at least once. I look at the schedule and I go, the schedule is set up for Seattle to end up with 11 or 12 wins and make the playoffs, win the division, go have a home playoff game. And with a top defense and a hopefully competent offense, they're going to be a tough out in the playoffs.
Yeah. I think that, just to counter that just a hair, I think you could say the same thing for Seattle or for the 49ers. I think 49ers fans, pundits, see that as well. They have the easiest schedule by far that I've seen in a long time for a team. And it's just a cakewalk, like the entire thing, except for the games against the Rams, the Cardinals, and the Seahawks. Everything else outside the division is in the 49ers' favor. So if they are healthy, if they do produce, if somehow it all comes together for them, they could be in pretty decent shape just because of the easy schedule that they face. But I think we've seen that time and again, where teams that face easy schedules in the regular season have a hard time winning games in the playoffs.
Well, I don't see them even making the playoffs, even with the easy schedule. I mean, where do the wins come from on that roster? You're looking at Bosa's got to do a lot of really, like, he's got to take over and dominate games the way Aaron Donald used to for the Rams. And then you've got Purdy, Christian McCaffrey have to somehow manufacture points without much else going on there. They don't have the receivers. They don't have. They've got Kittle at tight end, but their offensive line is not good. And Trent Williams is 67 years old and collecting, Social Security. So they're in a spot where that team could very easily just completely end up. They won 6 games last year, and now they're not as good. Like, I don't see how they're a better team.
So interesting exercise. I think we both predicted Seattle's going to take this division. I think that's a good sign. I think that if they can have a home game in the playoffs, I think, and win that game, will that be enough for you to consider this a successful season?
Considering they haven't won a playoff game since like 2017, yeah, I'll winning a playoff game, giving them an opportunity. They still have some depth issues to fix. They still have an offensive line to finish rebuilding. But they should go into 2026 as one of the favorites in the NFC, if not the favorite in the NFC. And that's where I'm looking for this team to be.
This team really does have a chance to win a playoff game. In fact, I would argue if they finish with a 12-win record and they get some sort of bye, potentially, if it's 13 wins, I think assuredly they'd get a bye, I think.
Well, only the top team gets a bye now that there's 7 teams in. You'd have to be the number 1 team in the NFC to get a bye. So
but a couple of home games anyway would help.
Yeah, a couple of home games. Yeah, even if you're the number 2 seed, that gives you a home game. Number 3 doesn't guarantee you a second one, but you usually end up with a second home game, and that's kind of where I see them. Is I think I said the 3 seed, and a home game, get a chance to win, and then it comes down to who was the 2 seed and did they win their first game? Because if they lost their first game, then you get a home game, and so. This is a situation where the Seahawks, win a home game, win a road game in the NFC title game, and then who knows, right? The Eagles, the Commanders, they will have already faced the Commanders at one point. Like, it's possible you can get by and have another Super Bowl appearance. When you have a defense that is as good as Seattle's defense is going to be, you're in every game, and you're a very tough out in the playoffs.
That's true. Yeah, I think we've said it a few different times, but the average win total for a number 1 defense in the NFL is like 11.5 wins. And that's not accounting for anything that the offense is doing. It's just, and that's the last 20 years.
Yeah, and that's when some of those being a lot of those being in a 16-game season too.
Yeah.
Now with a 17-game season, that number would go up. Probably closer to 12, 11 and 11.8 or something like that.
That's why I don't understand what's happening out there in the punditry world outside of Seattle. I don't understand. That's such a simple stat to look up. How do number 1 defenses, how does that translate into wins over the course of many, many years? And it's there for anyone to look at. And the average win total is 11.5 over 20 years. and you can't get around that. And that's exactly where you finish. That's where I'm at as well. And so that's the expectation. And I think I would be disappointed if we finished lower than that, for sure. And I would be disappointed if we didn't win a playoff game this year. I think it's totally doable. It's realistic. I feel a lot more comfortable listening to people like us and like Dan Viennes and Bryce Coots, who have all really followed this team very, very closely, are paying attention to all the moves and the ins and outs of the daily activities of this team. And we're all coming to the same conclusions that this is a really good team. So
I think if you look at the national pundits, because I've been looking at and trying to figure it out. Seattle's defense, because the defense started out really slow before they made some roster changes and before everything just kind of gelled within Macdonald's scheme. They started out so bad for the first few games that overall statistically they were a top 10 defense. They were 9th, 10th, 8th in a lot of stats, which is really good, but it's not enough where you're going to be like, oh, that's a dominant defense. And people aren't looking at the context of, well, once the defense figured out Macdonald's scheme and they made a few structural changes as far as playing time, that defense was top 5 by some metrics, top 3 by other metrics for the last like 8 or 9 games. And so they're taking Seattle and they go, well, the offense is and the defense is 10th. That's got a 500 team. And instead, those of us that have paid attention and know how good the defense was for the last 8 or 9 games, and they're bringing everyone back and they've added talent to it. We're thinking, top 3, top 2, maybe top 1. Sheil Kapedia said, this team should be the number 1 defense. And I think that's really the difference between what you and I see and what the national pundits see, and why Colin Cowherd has Seattle as being, the 6th best team in the NFL, because he sees Seattle's defense as what it is. Whereas other guys are kind of looking past them.
Yeah, he has them as the 2nd best NFC team overall. Mm-hmm. I will say this, Sheil Kapadia also had the team finishing with 8 or 9 wins and outside of the playoffs. And that'll tell you everything he thinks about Seattle's offense. His main concerns were, can Sam Darnold duplicate his year with the Vikings, and is the offensive line going to be any good? They're still kind of hung up on that. And I understand that if you're outside of this community and you're not really close to what the offense is doing, I can see that would be the narrative. But to me, it's a weak narrative because you're not looking close enough, I don't think. All right, let's get out of here. Find Keith on Blue Sky at Myers NFL. You can find me at NW Seahawk. The show is Seahawks Playbook Podcast. Find us on your favorite podcast platforms, from Spotify to whatever else is out there, Apple Podcasts, etc. And then find us on our YouTube channel and hit the subscribe button, share it, and leave a comment. Those are always fun. So until next time, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook Podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.